month, but it's a lot of money.
So what are you guaranteeing?
I'm guaranteeing the contract, same as everybody else does in the state.
So, the contract says that this is a CMA contract.
Yes,
So the county will hold the contracts
Yeah.
with the subcontractors.
yes.
How can you guarantee the cost of a subcontractor that you don't hold the contract on?
See, you back your fund up.
Back what?
You
I
back,
just back up the contract.
what do you?
Now, keep in mind, here's how it works, and Tracy is particularly sensitive to this. Fulton, which I pick on, but that's somewhat unfair because they all do it this way, Fulton, Hancock, whatever. Fulton in this particular case is $1.5 million over budget as of last week. They bid it, $1.5 million over. The guarantee that is in that contract, the same as all the other guarantees in the state, do not nullify that $1.5 million. Okay? So now we have $1.5 million shortfall in the budget at Fulton. The way it would typically be handled is when the financial advisor puts your budget together initially, they inflate the anticipated rate of the bond sale. Okay, now the bonds are sold in $5,000 increments in 5-year increments. So when they say, the bond rate was 2.5%, what they're really telling you is that's the net average of all those bonds assembled together. However, financial advisors, and probably smartly, right yourself, will inflate that net average interest rate initially, and they run it at 4%. So here we find ourselves over budget by $1.5 million. Where does that money come from? Think of your house payment. We have so much house, we have so much interest rate, we have a payment that has to cover that. But if the interest rate goes down, in theory, you can buy more house with the same payment. And that's exactly how they cover that shortfall. Okay. And then, once that's all put together, then the guarantee comes. In all of my years, and I've been doing this a long time, all of my years, I've never seen a project go over budget once it's been, ever. Not that it say it couldn't, but I've never seen it.
So are you saying that Fulton County is over $1.5 million, but that'll be made up in that?
In the interest differential. I'm assuming, but that's typically how it's been done. But there's no guarantee, nobody's gonna cover that $1.5 million.
So you're saying you've never run over on a project,
Never,
ever?
never. Never has the budget been compromised on a project, once it's been. No, not to say it couldn't, certainly, but it's never, not my time.
Just wanted to make sure I'm really clear on that. So I wanna ask more questions about this guarantee. So what mechanism is in place so if the project is guaranteed maximum price is $12 million, it ends up at $16 million, the work is complete, we therefore have to pay the subcontractors contractually because they've completed the scope of work in the contract that the county has entered into with them. So what mechanism is in place for us to recover that $4 million in that scenario?
Okay, obviously, it's a horrendously exaggerated scenario. But, then we'd have to step to the plate and make up the differential.
Okay. So what collateral would we be putting forward for that guarantee?
Whatever you think's appropriate.
Well, performance bond or payment bond or
You
cash.
know
I mean, if
you know how it's done
we
in
have a
this
safe in the
situation?
back.
You know how it's done in this situation? You say, well, we guarantee the price. Well, I think you're starting to see what that guarantee means. It's already bid, you're over budget. That's the most dangerous place in the budget, right then and there. Okay. So let's talk about Fulton County. They're over budget, we're gonna cover it, not a big deal. Several weeks from now, somebody will walk in and they'll say, well, here's the guaranteed number. That guaranteed number is based on contingency, which is in essence a pot of money that will be used by them to cover whatever may happen down the road. In that particular case, they set that contingency budget, you don't. So the more they put in there, the safer it gets. Makes sense.
Is that contingency a dollar amount or is it a percentage?
it is probably established on percentage, but when it's funded and you do the bond pro forma, it's a line item given amount. In that case, unusually, in that case, not done in every CMC contract, they also put a contingency in each of the bidders categories. And it specifically says that those categories are where we're gonna get paid with. So they really have two contingency amounts. The likelihood of that, once that guarantee goes in place, that going over budget is almost zero. I just don't know. Too much money in the fund. Tracy's biggest concern is if it goes over budget, at time of bid, because that's really where it's gonna happen if it happens at all. You have no guarantee against that, none. And then, from my side of the fence, if I wanna be real safe, just pump the heck out of the contingencies. Not that it's necessarily needed, but then I'll give you a performance bond, but I'll also get performance bonds from the subcontractors, which is very typically done. Which means if you have a problem with me or my subs, they'll be the first line vehicle.
How
to
much
make the
performance bond are you willing to put up?
A performance bond, it isn't the amount of the performance bond, it's in essence a guarantee that whatever work needs done will get done. That's what performance bond is.
Right, so are you bonding the entire project, or are you just bonding?
Well, but
Up to your
I can
fee
bond the
limit?
entire project because I'm gonna slough off like they do, bonds on all the subcontractors. So you'll have essence be covered twice, the subcontractor will be the primary bond, will be the secondary bond.
Well, I mean, obviously, this contract does not reflect the requirement for you to have a bond and policy to the project, bid amount.
No, and I'm sure that Mr. Okerson will discuss that at length, but no, it doesn't, not specifically, it doesn't.
Right.
But you are willing to.
But, you know, but keep in mind, I'm gonna do it like everybody else does. I'm gonna do the guarantee like everybody else does. Okay?
Yeah, my other concern is, in section 2672, it's on page 5 of the contract, I believe. Says should the commissioners not agree on a contingency amount post-bid and prior to funding, the GMP will no longer be considered necessary. I assume that means your intent of that is that in the event that you cannot mutually agree on a contingency amount, that you're striking the guaranteed maximum
That's
cost.
a far, far better situation than Fulton has. Because you guys, I as the commissioners, get a chance to oversee that number. At Fulton, they set the amount by contract exclusively for themselves. They don't get oversight.
Right, so I'm
Now, if you don't want
confirming,
oversight-
I would like an answer to the question. Am I reading that correctly? That
Yeah, I should believe.
it's nullifying the guaranteed maximum price if you
Yes.
cannot mutually agree on a contingency amount.
John,
So-
that article is the reason that I asked about the contingency in the first place, the percentage versus the dollar amount. Because I wanna understand, what are we talking about in terms of a mutually agreed contingency, specific to the GMP in this
Well,
contract?
the contingency is established once the bids are in hand, okay? And we know where you're headed, and the amounts and all that sort of stuff. Because the contingency has to be a line item forwarded to the bond council before they sell the bond. You want the money, put the right order, okay? So it's at that point that you'll have the opportunity to find fault with my contingency, if you want to. There, you have no choice. When they tell you you're gonna put $900,000 in the contingency, you're gonna put $900,000 in the contingency, because that's what the contract says. You don't get oversight. And I think that oversight can work from both.
Yeah, but that $900,000 is still going into GMP. So,
Yeah.
right, so I mean, it's still,
Exactly.
whether it's in this bucket or
And
that bucket,
strangely
or you push that into a package and call it
They do
general
that.
contracting, yeah, right, I'm saying if you're paying for it either way, it's all going in there.
You're trying to outfox the fox, is what's going on. In this particular case, they also put contingency in all the bid packages. How many contingencies do you need? And it goes on to say that the bids or the contingency put in the bid packages are the contingency we're gonna use for change order quote. That's the only thing you use the money for, is change orders. So what happens to this big pot of money over here, the big contingency line? According to that, any money left on the GMP, they get. You don't get, they get. So the bigger they can make that GMP here, with the actual cost here, they're gonna walk away with that difference of money. That's a huge, huge issue financially.
We didn't negotiate that deal. And
Well, I understand that, but
Right.
obviously,
There's three counties.
you're discussing stuff with
Right.
somebody who does do that sort of thing. And anybody that would do that to a county, it's just not my kind of thing.
I don't think we're here to discuss that, with anyone else other than you today, so I appreciate your concern on that. So how are you going to bond performance of a subcontractor that is not your
General contractor
subcontractor?
does it.
A general contractor, is that what you said?
It's the same way.
A general contractor has the contract with the sub and then has a, that's why he gets.
This is an insurance policy. This isn't some sort of,
Well, actually, it's a bond.
what is a bond? It's an insurance.
A bond is not an insurance policy. I'm an insurance agent, so I've got a little breadth of experience in the difference between the two.
You are not going to have cereal yet. Okay.
No.
I can give you 3 more revolutions of this contract and $85,000 a month every time I give you a revolution of this contract. If you want the CMC, go to your friend Paul, and I'm sure he'll give you a contract.
I asked you a question, I didn't get an answer for it. How do you have an interest in a contract?
I have every intention of doing it the way everybody else does it. I have every intention of putting a bond on every subcontractor on that project.
That gives it, the bond, that doesn't, so you are not gonna bond yourself
No,
for
I'll
their
do that
work?
too.
Uh,
I'll try to do that too. It seems like a double dip in the process, but my bond will be almost non-existent cost-wise, because there's no risk. All the risk's already been shoved off.
Do you agree with that, Josh?
Not necessarily, no, I mean, that's how a CMC contract is now, the construction manager, at risk has a bond, and now all the subs are bonded. But the subs are under contract with the CMC, not with the county, so I don't know how a bond.
But you understand that the subcontractors in either one are bonded. And they
In
do
either
that-
one, they are bonded.
They do that purposely because the bonds they provide you will cost them next to nothing. Because the insurance company, bonding company, if you will, in your case, they don't see any exposure. The exposure's already been passed on.
Do you agree with that, Josh?
No, I'm not, I mean, it's not like, anybody can walk in off the street and get bonded.
Not
But these people
necessarily.
can, the people we're dealing with can get the bonds, right?
There are dozens of contractors that can get bonds.
Right.
So I'm,
People
but I'm,
we're dealing with, like I said, you want CMC and you want, fine, but
I wanna be really clear with that. I have no, Barney from, Channel 20 to come in and put a bond up and build this jail. I don't care who built it, all I wanna do is make sure that the county's interests are taken. I have no interest in a specific contractor, I have no interest in,
Let's keep that in mind, though.
Yeah.
Just go with that, Jack. I know you may not agree with it, but just go with it for talking sake.
do you agree, Josh, that if the subcontractors are bonded, that the county's interests are covered?
no,
Why not?
because the actions of the CMC, why do you think the CMC has a bond? Because the actions of the
Because he's going to work
CMC.
at the site, that's why.
No,
He's exposing
there's
himself.
CMCs that don't produce, but they still contractually, by statute, have a bond. Because their actions are determinant to the outcome of the project. Are they not?
No, they're working at the site. And when they're working at the site, they, like the other subcontractors, have to provide the coverage of that bond.
So you're saying every CMC has always self-performed every job?
If they can. Here's how it works, and it's real easy. Okay, now, you're in my sandbox, so take this to the bank. What'll happen is, he's gonna say, we're gonna bid every component part of this job. Now, keep in mind that the reason inflation's tracking along at 8% is because every contractor has more work than him, okay? It's not like they're starving to death out there. So along comes your CMC and says, we're gonna do concrete and carpentry work. We're gonna bid that, because the contract says that, okay? However, is there an assurance that he will get a competitive bid against himself? Well, you think so, of course, but when it comes time to open the bids, they'll go, well, here's the firms I invited to do the carpentry work. But perhaps they were too busy. You think he didn't know that the day he started the process down the road? That makes him exclusively the bidder, the only bidder. Pretty sweet deal. You add that to, I get all the money that's left out of the contingencies, and on that list goes. Pretty sweet
But
deal.
we're not agreeing that he gets all the money that's out for contingency. That's still out to be determined, right?
In theory, yes. But remember, there's certain component parts of that contract that wasn't edited by them. It's just part of the contract. And one of those parts is the contingency is set by them. Now, think about it. If you don't get to set the contingency yourself as a firm, you're exposing yourself, freaking out, let's point it back. $13 million Fulton County, so $1.5 million, that's not the issue though. So they fund 14.5, and then to that, let's say they add a $500,000 contingency. Okay? Now, given that, why would you think that given them the amount of money, that somehow that would go over budget? I just don't understand it, especially given the fact I've never seen it happen. Could, certainly, but I've never seen it happen.
Well, my biggest, oh, sorry, Doc, go ahead.
I'd just like to say, the way I see it, the commissioners have done their homework. We're talking with a gentleman that has built more jails in Indiana than anybody else in the last 20 or 30 years. And he states he has never gone over budget. Well, we're Mickey Mousing around 3 months, it's $250,000, and inflation is already done. I think we need to get off of it.
Well, I wanna be
That's all
really
I
clear,
have
the
to
council
say.
has not delayed this project, the plans aren't done.
Plans aren't done, they'll let us done.
I kind of disagree with you on that one, Josh, because I think we have delayed the process on getting started. We're, like I use my analogy all the time, is we're a one-legged duck going around the pond. We just, every month that we wait, he says we lose $80,000 on the project, so.
How do you substantiate that?
How do you
Where are you
say
getting
we're
that?
So they did enough jobs around the state, even the ones I don't do.
The plans
And
aren't
the
done.
bill that
But we're
cost so
not
much
trying
last
to
year,
move forward.
did this year.
We're not supposed to start until February or March at the earliest.
sorry,
The
what?
designs aren't even finished, you can't even put it to bid yet.
No, that's true. I'm just saying that the inflation rate that I'm saying, which is 7 or 8%, has proven itself over and over and over again. Because the jail, for the most part, is cookie cutter, for lack of a better way to describe it. They're all more or less the same. So if you get one jail last year that cost $84,000 a bed, you have one this year that costs $96,000 a bed. Inflation.
But it's
The
not costing
inflation on
us
a jail is
$80,000
running
a month
harder.
right now, like you're making it sound.
I'm sorry.
I said, but it's not costing us $80-some thousand a month like you're making it sound, because we're not there yet. We don't have the design. I mean, if we said
you
yes
could
to
build
this
it
contract,
today-
you'd do nothing different tomorrow than you would if we don't, because
So that's right, but your jail, by the time you get it, will be that much more expensive than it will be today. So anything that delays that opportunity of getting the bid started is expense.
I would like to ask our attorney's opinion about what you've shared today, Jack, and
Yeah, and I'll limit mine to the contract terms. Does this contract in front of us have the language that would, require the contingency come back to the county at the end of the project?
It's
If there's anything left?
predetermined because I haven't said otherwise.
But is it in this document?
No, but I can put it in there easy.
And so it would go in there. And this is an AIA document, which means there's a blue million of them out there, and they get changed all the time, but they're pretty darn good documents, and they're the gold standard of what's used. Would you agree with that?
That AIA document is the same one that will blend with all the subcontractor contracts.
Yeah, and so it makes perfect sense. You don't wanna go out and, be a novelist when you've got
Exactly. We already got
AIA
it.
documents to be used. It's the way. to
And
do
you'll
it.
notice
Make sure
the AIA
things work.
document, every time you see a vertical line on the left side of the program, you mean
Got it
somehow
changed or
been changed.
And so, this is an AIA document with a construction manager as advisor, and that is what you're proposing. There is also an AIA document that would be the document that would be for constructor, in other words, at-risk construction manager. Is there a reason you're not using using that as opposed to
Several
this one?
things, one of which is a construction manager intent from its inception in 1965 in California was to use somebody at the construction site that had no vested interest in the outcome of the construction site, first-class quality stuff. If you hire someone who is a constructor, who watches the constructor?
So just in terms of the documents, again, back to the contract documents, so your answer is that you don't believe it's the best for the county to have that construction manager on the job site doing construction,
Exactly.
bidding on construction.
Yeah, and don't
And
take
so
it-
that,
Right.
just to finish the thought, and so that's why you are proposing this AIA document as opposed to using the other one for construction.
Yeah, because I don't believe that I should be out there constructing things.
And so you would add the contingency reversion, you would also, I believe, just to make sure I got the notes correct, that you would agree to having a total performance bond on top of all these subcontractor bonds.
Yeah.
Because as you say, it's not as
Particularly if
expensive, because you've already
Yeah.
got it covered once.
If you and the county's attorney think that it isn't double dipping and it isn't double coverage, I had a financial advisor, and these are sideline conversations, but he always wanted the contractor to provide 150% performance bond. He said, what in the world would you do that for? A bond is a bond, 100% of right is 100% of right, and all you're gonna do is exaggerate the expense of a bond unnecessarily. It's the only guy ever in the state of Indiana that ever did that, and every time we got a job with him, we had to do it. So the saying, it's crazy. The point being is, when you insure 100% of the job, bond 100% of the job, whatever vehicle you use, it's still 100% of the job covered.
And
Now-
then, and back on the document, you've got the guaranteed maximum price at 2.6.7.1. But that's really gonna be dependent upon the contingency. So, as I understand your
That's
explanation.
exactly right,
is-
that's the same in either
is that-
form of
is
contract.
that the bigger the contingency, the more you can say, oh yeah, we're gonna be within that, no problem. So just to use a silly example,
Which is,
you put in a, 50% contingency, well, you're gonna cover it within that, so if you give a GMP at that 50% more, because it's got a 50% more contingency, it's a done deal, you're gonna beat it. So the interplay between this contingency fund and the GMP is very real. The bigger the contingency fund that's negotiated, and I understand what you're saying, that the county
mine
gets
does,
to
that
negotiate.
one is not.
And so the county gets to negotiate, but if that is not agreeable, then there will be no GMP. And so,
That's my biggest concern.
But it makes perfect sense. If I have to guarantee a $13 million job, and you don't agree with what I think the coverage of that job should be, then I shouldn't be held accountable for the cost. Who's to say that they don't agree, it goes off the table, and they want a 2% contingency when it ought to be 4% contingency?
And I'll say that just as far as the documents themselves, I'm familiar with their use in West Lafayette, that's a constructor or at risk. you know, it comes down to when the bids come in, what's the GMP gonna be? And the GMP is gonna be what they say it is, because that's all they're willing to say. So, my point is that the GMP in a construction contract, okay, not this one, at risk, the disadvantage, if you will, to it, is that GMP is going to be established by the construction manager. They're not gonna guarantee something just because you asked for it. You said, would you guarantee me at 12? No. Will you guarantee me at 12.5? No. You know, I'll guarantee you at 15. Oh, well, you didn't want 15, that's too high, but that's all they'll guarantee you at. And so, to me, you know, both of them have disadvantages. I see and agree with the bottom line is with the constructor, in other words, the CMC at risk, or CM3 is constructor, the bottom line is you've got that number that you know you're not gonna go above. And so, that's an advantage. However, if that number's too big, then you really haven't gained much. So if you get a guaranteed maximum price at 18, oh boy, I'm glad it's guaranteed, but we can only afford 16. So it's not a perfect world on either side. And I guess that's my opinion. Is this an enforceable document? It's a GMP as long as you can get a contingency. So.
So why don't we work that out now?
But that's true of either.
Well, it's
type of
gonna,
contract.
because the contingency isn't gonna be worked out to get bids.
So then, what you're saying is, can we go ahead and proceed and get the bids in to see, you know, take baby steps as we go along here?
Well, yeah, so to your point, I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
No, go ahead.
To your point, so if, in practice, what's gonna happen is if the contingency is not agreed upon, the contract reverts to the original CMA contract where the construction manager as agent gets paid a percentage of the job, and it doesn't matter if the job goes over cost, which is, the contract would be reverting essentially to the contract that we just voted down tied to, in the event that the commissioners cannot agree with the construction manager as a, on.
What do you think happens there? You know what, they took the agreement out, right?
No, and just back to my opinion, I agree with your statement.
Right.
And I think you agree with the statement too. I get it. What you're trying to say is that you got oranges and oranges sort of. You know, you got it one way with the advisor, which is what you're proposing with this GMP language. You got it another way with the other kind of contract, but both of them have disadvantages. Both of them have advantages, and it's gonna come down to, are you in a good environment for the county to get a good deal? Well, no, you're not. I mean, I don't think you are, and so it's gonna be a pressured, it's going to be a high number. I think all indications from everything, you're seeing it around, I'm seeing it in, you know, 3 or 4 places that I work, it's gonna be a big number just because of the embargo. Maybe that changes tomorrow, who knows, so that can help. But it's just a lot of work out there, just a lot of work out there. So either way, you are gonna take risks. And this will give you a guarantee, but only if you can get that contingency work out.
When do we do that then? When do we work
When
out?
the bids are in.
Right, so my biggest concern, and this would be a good question while you're here, Jack, if that, what would make me more comfortable personally is if the contract, if that doesn't come to an agreement, it doesn't revert back to an existing contract, for service, it would be, you know, if there's no agreement, then the contract is canceled.
Josh, consider two things. Typically at the state legislature, the legislators are influenced by their constituents who have the money and the horsepower to push legislation through. One would assume that the design build legislation went through 4 years ago is exclusively of the greatest sense of sliced bread for all of these public entities, therefore will pass it on. Along comes CMC, which was passed 2 years ago, it was passed earlier than that, the Loudoun County government, 2 years ago. One assumes that somebody passed that or pushed it through because it was there. Then we pushed it through the AGC, Associated General Contract. Why? Because it's pretty smooth work, and they like that. That's number one. Number two, anybody in this room, anybody that thinks either one of those contracts, CMC or CMA, is going to guarantee a number that puts them in any significant risk whatsoever, is smoking the wrong stuff. It just won't happen. It's too big a number. Think about it. $13 million, and you want me to guarantee that without some sort of buffer? The bigger the buffer, the better we like it. In their case, they tell you what the buffer will be, in my case, you get to negotiate with me.
I just wanna be really clear, you keep saying that, but they will shoot you, they will be in the guaranteed maximum price. They said it, but they say, this is what we will do, yes or no? Am I correct? They're gonna set the contingency and make an offer to you. The county has no obligation to take that offer.
Well, no,
Yes or
if you
no?
don't, you've created a monster legally that you're gonna have to figure out a way to back out of,
Right.
which would be just god awful at that point.
Right. But it is still within the guaranteed maximum price, whatever the contingency would be set. And we're not debating that.
Yeah,
No,
obviously.
We're not talking about that. We're having this discussion about the contracting representatives. So, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? And I'm gonna switch gears here, so if you want to continue the conversation you were having.
Oh, yeah, so I just wanna ask one final question. So, if would you be comfortable, or would you add to your contract, a clause that if there is no agreement between the contingent, on the contingency issue, that the contract is void?
Sure. I'll do that.
All right. And,
Of course, you know, in doing that, you're gonna not create another massive legal problem. Because the guarantee is gonna come post-bid, all the bids will have a certain timeline in which they have to be activated on and awarded. And all of a sudden, you take them to CM and throw him away. Whoa, that'll be serious stuff.
But you won't let that happen, because you're gonna do a good job.
Tracy, in my 40-some-odd years, I've built billions, quite honestly, billions of dollars worth of projects in that methodology. I know exactly what the contingency should be in a good ballpark. New construction, it should be about 1.5% of the construction value. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. Do you think anybody on a CMC contract is gonna guarantee it with 1.5% contingency? Not
I'm
real
just
life.
saying, if you put in this clause,
Not real life.
it's not gonna happen anyway, because you're going to make sure it doesn't happen. So,
I'm gonna do everything within my power to give you the best project I possibly can, like I have every other client. And we're damn good at what we do because we've done it so often.
so he said he
So was
wants
that a
that clause
yes?
in also.
Yeah, I'll say it's void, you won't do it because it would be political suicide and legal suicide, but I'll put it there if you want.
Well, obviously, if it goes out with a voidable, call it voidable, in other words, it gets voided at the option of the county. If the contingency cannot be negotiated, then the county gets to go, we choose to void it. It would be the commissioners who would make that choice, not us, not this time. And so that's all fine and good, but the bid documents would have to reflect that. The bid documents, at least, again, it's not my call, it'd be Ted's call, but I would have the conversation with Ted that say, hey, we really ought to have those bid documents reflect that we have a deal that you could make a bid and that we would cancel the contract. Now, that's kind of always the case, quite frankly, because you can always reject all bids. And the law allows you to reject all bids.
Then start over.
But it doesn't help you in the marketplace. When you're basically saying to them, oh, by the way, if you put all this work in and you win, we might reject you. So it's a marketing issue, and marketing can save or lose your money, you know, as if people go, that county, you know.
So you don't recommend it?
I think you would have to rely on the law that says that you may reject all bids, always an option, and no matter what. And you have that power inherent.
We do, or the commissioner?
The commissioners, the commissioners do. The law supports the ability of any public body to get all those bids and then reject all the bids. It can't say, oh, we'll take that one, reject that one in that situation, reject them all. Okay. And then, as you say, what you're doing is you're putting a hard stop on the project. Not that it couldn't be renewed, but it would be hard stop for that time period.
So that's not really gonna happen, then. I mean, in all likelihood, that's not just not gonna happen. That Jack's saying.
I think I think the power would exist, but it's unlikely the power would be used because of the repercussions.
So then what's the value, that if
So Josh, do you really wanna do that? Do you, hearing what he said,
Well-
that doesn't sound like a very positive situation.
well, I don't think the other outcome where they can't agree on a contingency and we have no guarantee at that point, that's a bad outcome as well, so that's why.
At least it's an option, it doesn't have to be exercised.
Right.
It's a tool you got in the tool bag, you don't ever have to pull it out, and if you don't, okay.
And if the bids are good enough, then we shouldn't have to use it.
Right, that's a
And that
good
is
point
back-
too.
that's
And if
back
the
to
bids
your
are
ballpark.
terrible, and you can't afford it anyway, then no matter which project delivery method you're using, you can't afford it, you're not gonna be able to do it. That cut back the project.
You know, it's like everything else, contracts are never used unless they need to be used.
Yeah.
And so, in essence, boils down to the fact that you trust the people you're gonna contract with to do a good job for you. So,
So then, in order to move this forward, you know, can you write that in, right, you know, just right now and,
He just said he would do that.
well, then, I mean, today, will you write in there today, so we can make a movement, you know,
I
you
guess if
just.
the attorney says my longhand writing with the initial is valid, I'll go.
I'm sure your writing's fine, however, you know, I think, to me, the way to keep the ball moving forward is if you have contingencies that you believe are necessary for you to approve moving forward with this contract and whatever changes are, that you say so. That we say these are subject to the following, one or two, whatever those number of contingencies are, then it gets drafted, because you're not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it, because it's not my document, and I'm not gonna change your document. I would assume Ted would do it. Ted would put the language in, or you would work with Ted and put in the language that accomplishes those contingencies that you folks say, if you do the following, then we will approve. So that's one way to move it forward. You're not approving this contract. You are saying, hey, here's the contract, we would need the following changes, and so we would approve. And remember the whole reason that you folks are involved. Most everything commissioners just get to go do, and you pay for it. Just simple, okay? That's the way it's set up. The law has a specific, I'll call it an exemption, for this situation that puts you right in the driver's seat. That you have the full authority to say yes or no. And the law's there for a reason. And I think what we're seeing play out here is there's a lot of financial risk. And everybody's aware of that, commissioners certainly are, and you are too. And you're just all trying to do the best you can to manage that risk.
So if we do, if he agrees to put some of these changes and stuff in there, we both have a meeting in a week. So could it go to the commissioners first, then ours second, and then we move forward next week?
We could have a joint meeting at 9 o'clock, couldn't we do? Okay.
When did you say that?
December 31st at 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay, that's right, you already got
I would think on that one paragraph, I just wrote on the back, if it's not agreed upon, this contract is void and initial it, you're done.
the idea.
So you're saying we can do it today?
Yeah, but there's bonding language, there's
Okay.
more than.
Yeah, I don't think doing it on the fly is anybody's
No.
best interest.
I like to put
And just back to,
The bonding language, quite honestly, is ridiculous, but it's okay. I mean, we can't insure something more than 100%, you just can't do it.
You wanna hear what,
Yeah, I still have a thought. Jack, Article 11.1.2 specifies construction fee at 4.75%. So, how did you land on that number?
Well, I landed on 5, which is Cass County's number, street, but then you guys started arguing back and forth, and all right, I'll give you some sort of bridge on the site. What we do is we figure the manpower, all we're selling here is manpower. It's an expertise in manpower, that's what it is. And there is overhead, nothing like bulldozers and all that. I have guys in my payroll who are squeezing down the woods, and they get paid accordingly. So what I do is I have to figure out what has to be done with pre-construction, investments to do, and so on and so forth, the bidding process. And then I have to put these guys out in the field. And the guys going to the field are the singularly most expensive part of that whole thing. Okay, so, I'm not sure, I'm answering your question, but I'm sure how many man hours of this process, of that process, you have all up in the sort of plans.
Have you signed CM contracts at lower than 4.75% recently?
Nothing, I'm trying to think. I have 10 going right now, but they're in various stages.
I'm not talking about that have been executed, I'm just talking
No.
about,
No.
you would have been agreeable to do the CM work at lower than 4.75%
And some of them-
contractually.
Some of them are flat fees. No percentage, that's the number.
What was your bid for Fulton County?
To be honest with you, I don't remember. It might have
Saying
been
it
lower,
over.
it might have been lower, I don't remember. Yeah, I'm not sure it was, to be honest with you. That was crash and burn from day one because they were hammered with this guarantee. Which I think you're coming to realize has no substance for the most part. Not at least the way it's being sold.
Well, it has substance once it's set. Question is, how's it set?
Yeah, and the exposure after, once it's set. Now, if you set that, now,
Set, it's got real teeth, but
oh my God, if you set that now, think of the exposure.
How high will it be
Oh
set?
my God.
Maybe stuff is.
The sooner the guarantee is set, the higher the guarantee will be, because it means higher the risk.
So how do we wanna get a list?
well, the list that I've gotten so far that Mr. Kraus would agree to the CMA contract is voidable, and I'll use the word voidable, and I think Ted will agree with me, not void. Void has all sorts of strange ramifications. So for voidable, meaning the county could void it, contingency is not agreed. He's also agreed that he would add language that would specifically cause the any contingency left to revert to the county, which I know has been something that's important.
Say that again about.
That if there's a contingency left at the end of the whole project, that comes back to the county.
So he's agreeing with that?
He's agreeing
Yeah,
with that.
right.
And that's sort of the operation anyway, but we can put it in there specifically, because it says.
So what's kind of interesting is, if you think about it, let's say that it comes in under budget, significantly under budget. So you have all this fluff, if you will, potential bonding effect. And so your commissioners and I arrive at a contingency at that point that's exaggerated. But in my case, let it be exaggerated, because you're gonna get the money back in any event. You see what I'm saying?
As long as it's mutually agreed upon.
Yeah, well,
I'd like to see it in writing.
so if it's a huge contingency and you can afford a huge contingency, what's the difference? You're gonna get it back.
And the other thing that Mr. Kraus indicated, he would agree to having a total aggregate performance bond by him, performance bond, on top of the subcontractor bonds. And again, to understand that, and you know it for yourself, is if you've already got them for all the subs, then the cost is not great, and it's performance. That is not a bond that says if there's an overrun on the GMP that covers that. The performance bond is just that, perform the work in the field, so you know you're gonna get the work done. It does add a little bit of measure of protection, but it's not.
In essence, it's the performance of my people, not of the
Yeah.
contractor.
Right, good.
Eric, can we approve it pending all those things?
And that's kind of what I was saying, is that you would say, yeah, we're gonna approve it if the language comes through with all these changes. Because again, AIA is a specific document that needs to be dealt with correctly by somebody who works with AIAs, because otherwise you put the language wrong and it changes something else, you just don't want to do it. It's a good document, it just needs to be used
So,
correctly.
at the end of the day, if it goes over, are you gonna sign a personal guarantee that, for this?
Your piece of work, I'll give you that.
So,
A personal guarantee.
Jack, that's what the
Personal
guarantee, no,
guarantee.
stop, I'm asking a question. So, if, I'm saying, if this goes $1 million over budget, we still have to pay the subcontractors, correct?
Yeah. Now, what's the likelihood of that? You're just
Jack,
speculating on the
okay.
wildest hairs imaginable.
Okay, Jack, I'm talking, thank you.
No, I understand, John.
So, $1 million over. You're laughing, but.
Over the GMP, just to be clear.
Yes, just to be clear. Who's gonna pay that $1 million?
Well, apparently your expectation is I'm gonna sign over my grandkids before this is over with.
Who's gonna pay the $1 million? That's an honest question, and if you don't give me an honest
It
answer,
depends on what the
it really
performance
speaks to
bond is. Well,
where
you
we're
can
at.
vote no in any event.
Excuse me?
I said you can vote no in any event if the expectations that you're not getting from me aren't met. obviously you don't think our firm can get the job done.
I've never said that. I said I wanna know who is gonna pay if it goes wrong. You're guaranteeing. So what are you guaranteeing? Are you guaranteeing that you're gonna make us whole? That you're gonna pay that
If it goes
difference?
over the GMP?
If you go over the GMP.
Well, I guess I'll have to, won't I, if that's the rules of engagement, right? What's the point of the GMP?
Okay, so you are personally guaranteeing it then? Or you're putting some kind of guarantee, you're.
I'll put my office buildings on the table for you, okay? They're worth $6 million, enjoy them. The likelihood of that happening is none and none, but go ahead.
So yes, you will make a personal guarantee, basically. That's cool.
Fine. You know what, it's getting to the point where obviously your expectation of the firm